Welcome back to the East Asian Leadership in International Law video lecture. This time, we are going to talk about reflections on the International Law Association, the so-called the ILA. The International Law Association was established with a view to establishing the peace, justice, and development through law. It was founded in October 1873 in Brussels as the Association for the Reform and Codification of the Law of Nations, with the constitutional objective of promoting the study, clarification, and development of international law, and furthering international understanding and respect for the international law. Currently headquartered in London, it is one of the oldest and largest academic organizations in the field of the international law. The ILA 150th Anniversary Conference was held in Paris, France, last June. There are currently 4,600 international experts that are active members dedicated to issues in international law, and 63 national branches. Reflective of the origins of international law, there are 31 branches located in Europe and 11 in Americas and Oceania, and constituting the majority, and 50 branches in Asia and 6 in Africa. The core function of ILA are research, analysis, and the adoption of resolutions on major issues of international law through the 19 committees and 1 study groups in operation. The committees and study groups are formed voluntarily through the free exchange of opinions and the building of a consensus on topical international legal issues. The committees form the basis of the ILA are entrusted with the evaluation of the primary of the activities during a 4-year period, subject to a few exceptions, and with the activities up to 8 years, thereupon extension as necessary. In particular, the committees are producing meaningful results in legislative processes in a field of the prohibition on the use of force, human rights law, environmental law, the ocean law, and space law. Meanwhile, the study groups select comprehensive and topical international legal issues that are less suitable for resolution adoption and conduct in-depth research on them. The study groups are sometimes subject to expansion into committees. Ever since the inaugural conference in 1873, the ILA conference have been held regularly, except during the 2 World War period. The ILA conferences, which were previously held rather irregularly, annually, sometimes biannually, become a biannual event since the 43, the Brussels Conference in 1948. Thus far, most of the host countries have been major European countries or United States. Although ILA is a pure academic organization, it has a special implication for issues of international law and interstate dynamisms and dynamics in East Asia. The first, among the 63 national branches in the world, China does not have a representative national branch, with the Taiwanese branch having been established in 1961 as the only registered branches. Chinese academics have been participating as individual members of the ILA headquarters located in UK, perpetuating the controversy the surrounding representation in the ILA. Determined to maintain its representation in the ILA, Taiwan not only hosted the 68th conference in 1998, but also planned and hosted the ILA Asia Pacific Branch Conference separately from the biennial ILA conference. For Taiwan, including together with this ILA, the Asia Pacific Regional Conference, the ILA seems to serve as a very important window and gateway to the world. As for the Japanese branch, they founded in 1920. It has established the constant presence within the IRA, given its long history and overall high awareness of international law. Japan, which hosted 51st the Tokyo Conference in 1964, in conjunction with the 1964 the Tokyo Summer Olympics, had initially planned on hosting the 79th Kyoto Conference in 2020 in conjunction with the 2020 Tokyo Summer Olympics. However, as you know, the conference took place in a hybrid format because due to the COVID-19 pandemic taking a turn for the worse. The conference was rehosted by Japan after it was forced to step down as the hosting country subsequent to the 2011 Fukushima nuclear accident, much to Japan's regret. By participating actively in the IRA activities, Japan has been stressing that it is a state faithful to the rule of law, complying to and preparing the settlement of international legal dispute through the private international system. It also has been distinguishing itself from the other East Asian countries by comparing itself with a state like China that have shown a very passive stance toward this settlement process through the third parties. As it relates to Korea, the Korea branch hosted 62nd Seoul Conference in 1986. The Seoul Conference was held with ardent support of the government with a view to dispelling the negative views of the international legal community regarding the contemporary authoritarian military regime in Korea, while encouraging participation in the upcoming 1988 Seoul Summer Olympics on the part of the communist nations with whom the Korean government did not have diplomatic relations. The hosting of IRA conference is proportional to the capacity of a given region and state in international law. In Asia, IRA conferences were held only in Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, as aforementioned, as well as India, the 56th the New Delhi Conference in 1974, and 70th New Delhi Conference in 2002, and Philippines, the 58th the Manila Conference, 1978. Of note is the fact that out of total of the 80 IRA conferences held thus so far, in Asia, a mere 7 were hosted in 5 countries, proving Asia's lack of capacity and its status as a latecomer in the formation of the discourse on international law. The 80th Biennial Conference of the IRA was held in Lisbon from the June 19 to 24 to 22nd under the theme of the international law, our common good. It was the first in-person conference held in 4 years since the 78th Sydney Conference in 2018. A total of the 80 committees in 3 study groups presented their studies, and the 14 different panel discussions were organized. In particular, there were various discussions on peace and security, human rights protection, and refugee issues with regard to ongoing Ukrainian crisis in Europe, as well as climate change and maritime issues. Among the reports of the committees and study group, where I'm serving as an officer and chairman, the following are noteworthy. The Committee on International Law and Civil Rights deals with the contemporary issues in international law in relation to civil rights. The committee has analyzed the potential impact that change in baselines due to civil rights may have on previously defined limits of the maritime zones or ongoing the maritime delimitation negotiations. In particular, after reviewing state practice of a small island state in the South Pacific, the committee recommended that on the ground of the basic principle of the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, as well as the legal certainty and stability, the previously defined baselines and limit should not be required to recalculate it. Furthermore, the committee urged the protection of the migrants and refugees displaced from the area affected by the sea level rise, and present a report reviewing the possible changes in constituent element of state due to the loss of territory from the sea level rise under international law. For example, the population, territory, and governments, and the capacity to enter into relations with another state, and its legal status and their instant effect on legal rights, such as the relocation of persons inevitably affected by the foregoing changes. The final report of the committee will be presented at the 81st Delphi Greece Conference this year. The study group on Asia's step practice of domestic implementation in international law seek to examine the substance of the so-called Asian international law used in the rhetorical sense. The study group analyzed whether Asian international law truly exists, and if so, in what manner it is expressed in light of the Asian state practice and domestic legislative procedures. Through a series of joint studies conducted with the participation of the 16 major states, the substance of Asian international law examined in the following 4 areas: ocean and territory, environment, human rights, and trade and investment. The report completed after the first 4-year activity period take a pessimistic stance on the substance of the Asian international law. In other words, it has been concluded that it is not empirically valid to claim that Asian international law exists separately. For instance, it is easy to point out and identify the fundamental problems of international law related to territorial expansion of imperial states in Asia, but should there be no advancement to phrase the utilizing its substance after conceptualization of the identified problems and materialization of the concept, it will merely result in the continual repetition of a certain level of critical discourse. Only when substantial results are yield from such a Herculean task will we be able to find the answer to substance and implications of the Asian international law as distinguished from the Eurocentric international law. Through our studies during the extended 4-year period, we will possibly conduct further research on the state practice of international law in major Asian countries with different topics in depth and breadth. As such, it should be noted that IRA conferences operate in a de facto track 1.5 format as they are premised on the global participation of international experts who deal with the topical issues of the international law. The IRA conference also serves as a venue to carry out campaign activities for candidates in international law, related elections of international organizations. Finally, there is a lack of planning capacity that is necessary to bring contemporary national issues to the front points, thereby provoking discussions from the international community. The lack of awareness of such a necessity is a result of neglecting the fact that the application of international in East Asia remains the task of a century. Thank you very much for your very kind attention.